Good morning, fifth grade. This is Miss Brandon. This is our science lesson for today. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're enjoying your week so far. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the activities and assignments for today. Our first activity is our visual literacy mat. Let's take a look. So you do not write on the first page, right? This is just what it would look like in a if we were not virtual, right? Okay. Now, on yesterday, you should have already answered pages 2 and 3. So the first one was you analyzed and what detailed observations can you make with 2 to 3 sentences, and then you made connections in 2 to 3 sentences to this picture yesterday. Now, this document's only going to be posted on Monday's assignment. So after you watch this video, go back to Monday's assignment, and then you're going to open it up, and you're going to do the next page 4, I think. And you will, it says August 25th on there, and it says classify and critique. What type of visual is this? Is it a photo? Is it a graph? What kind of visual? Is it the best way to communicate this information? And what are the limitations? So what do you know from this picture and what don't you know? So really you're just kind of critiquing what the visual. You can tell, like I said, tell me what kind of visual it is, what does it tell you, and what doesn't it tell you? All right, like for example, I can give you a limitation. You don't know where this is, do you? That's a limitation, right? Okay, I just gave you one. All right, let's move on to the next one. So it's going to be on, before I do, it's on Jamboard and it's on PDF, and you just do a little bit every day. All right, number 2 for Tuesday is Flipgrid. So there's another Flipgrid discussion. You are going to click on the link, and you are going to read the question, and you're going to respond to it, and then respond to 2 other friends, at least. But it's really fun to go in there and start listening to what other people's thoughts are. All right, great. And then, of course, there's this video lesson is number 3. And then number 4 is highlight the variables activity, which we will review this after we do our lesson. And our lesson today is going to be on variables and experiments. We're just going to go spend one last day. This is actually our last day on scientific experiments for now. We will pick it up again later in the year, but tomorrow we're going to start landforms. So this is our last day, and our last day we're going to do one more review of variables. All right, here's our review of the scientific method, and we'll talk a little bit about the different types of variables. So what do you know? A what is an educated guess to the question or problem. You can shout it out. A hypothesis, right? A hypothesis is an educated guess to the question or to a problem. The something states whether your hypothesis is correct or incorrect. What's the answer to that? Your conclusion, right? When the end, remember we talked about that yesterday, you're going to state whether the hypothesis is correct or incorrect, and then you're going to say why, how you're going to explain your thinking. Great. What would make the results of an experiment carried out by a research team valid? We've talked about this a little bit. What makes something valid, your experiment? The experiment was repeated, and the same results were obtained each time. So if somebody else can do if you can repeat your experiment and get the same results, and somebody else can take your experiment and get the same results each time, that makes it valid. It's going to validate. What is measured and is known as the what variable? Which variable is the one that's measured? Do you remember? Dependent, right? That's what is measured. That's our data. Let's look at this experiment. To test the effects of hormones on plant growth, 6 plant seedlings of the same species, so they're all the same, were put in identical pots with the same amount of soil. 3 were measured and then sprayed with hormones, and 3 were measured and not sprayed. So 3 have hormones and 3 don't, were sprayed. They were all given the same amount of water and light for 4 weeks. Can you name some of the controlled variables? Can you think about that? Can you say 1 or 2? The controlled variables are the seedlings. Those are all the same. The pots are the same. The soil's the same. The water is the same. The light is the same. And the time that they grew. So you have to kind of be able to, you're going to have to be able to name a few of the controls. You don't have to list them all, but it would be good for you to be able to pick out a few of things that stay the same for everything in the experiment, and they stay the same every time you do the experiment. All right, let's look at it again. To test the effects of hormones on plant growth, the same one, 6 potted plant seedlings of the same species were measured, and 3 were sprayed with a growth hormone, and 3 were not sprayed. After 4 weeks of growth under ideal conditions, the plants were measured again. Identify the independent and dependent variables. Our independent variable is the growth hormone because some plants got it and some plants didn't. That's the one thing that changes. What's the dependent? Remember, they're going to measure how tall they are. It's the length of the seedling. Good job, y'all. The results of one experiment carried out by a research team would be considered valid. Remember, valid if number 1, this is multiple choice. The experiment had no control setup. All the members of the research team came to the same conclusion. The experiment had more than one variable, or the experiment was repeated and the same results were obtained each time. Which one's going to make the experiment valid? 4, right? Again, it's going to be valid if it's repeated by somebody else and you get the same results. It's going to validate it. Let's look at this one. There's a data table here. Which is the dependent variable in Amelia's experiment? Number 1, the number of bean plants in each group, the amount of water given daily to each plant, the height of each bean plant, or 4, the amount of fertilizer given to each group of bean plants. Which one is dependent? Do you remember that's the data, right? The height. These measurements are the dependent variable. So the height of each bean plant. All right. Is it starting to click a little? Which statement about the use of independent variables in a controlled experiment is correct? Okay. Number 1, which one's correct? Number 1, a different independent variable must be used each time an experiment is repeated. Number 2, the independent variables must involve time. Number 3, only one independent variable is used for each experiment. Number 4, the independent variables state the problem being tested. Remember, the only one independent variable is used in each experiment. It's the one thing that changes. Which statement about the use of controlled variables in an experiment is correct? There is only one controlled variable in an experiment. Number 2, the controlled variables stay the same for the entire experiment and when the experiment is repeated. Number 3, you don't really need to worry about the controlled variables. And number 4, the controlled variables must include time or the experiment is not valid. Right? The controlled variables stay the same for the entire experiment and when the experiment is repeated. That's it. Let's take a look at our activity for today. All right, so remember, you have the visual literacy mat. You're only having to do one page today. That should only take you about 5 minutes. And then you have your flip grid. And again, that should only take you about 5 minutes also, maybe 10 at the most. And then you watch this video. And then the last thing you're going to do to wrap up your day is you're going to do this, highlight the variables. So now that we've been learning about variables and we just had the review, now you're going to show me if you know which type of variable is which. If this is in a PDF, and you are going to highlight the dependent variables green with a green highlighter, you are going to highlight the independent variables yellow with a yellow highlighter, and then you're going to highlight the controlled variables orange. Okay, so a lot of this document will be highlighted. And don't worry about the different boxes, just within the box, okay? If you think so, if within a box should be two different highlighted colors, that might be. I'm not saying each box is going to be a different color, okay? So just read through the whole thing and highlight green for dependent, yellow for independent, and orange for controlled. If you do not have that highlighter feature, you can write it on the side. You can just write on the side and tell me which section is which. Okay? So tell me, and I'll read it to you. Does dark chocolate melt faster in the sun than white chocolate? If I place a piece of dark chocolate and a piece of white chocolate in the same sunny location, then I predict the dark chocolate will melt faster. I'll need 3 pieces of white chocolate, 3 pieces of dark chocolate of the same brand, a sunny location, a stopwatch, and 3 small white paper plates. Number 1, get an equal-sized piece of dark chocolate and white chocolate of the same brand. Number 2, place both pieces on the same small white paper plate with a space in between. Number 3, take them outside, place them in a sunny location, and start the stopwatch. Number 4, record the time that each piece changes to a soft pile of chocolate. Repeat steps 1 through 4 2 more times. After conducting this experiment, I found that my hypothesis was correct. The dark chocolate melted faster than the white chocolate in all 3 trials. So then you have trial 1, the white chocolate and the dark chocolate there in times, trial 2 and trial 3, all the different times. And then they made this nice little graph that shows, we haven't gone into, you may remember this from 4th grade. The time is on this, the time over here, and then you have the blue is white and the orange is dark chocolate, and that shows you visually, that's why we like the graphs, shows you visually the data. All right, and once you're done, turn it in. Again, use the highlighter function or just write it on the side. Let me know if you have any questions. Have a great day.